This is Paul McGuire. One thing I want to encourage you about and remind you about is that whenever a nation or a society, a community or a state or a family, whatever, faces the kind of intense trials that we're facing in the United States and around the world due to the coronavirus, things that people took for granted, like food, like supermarkets, like pharmacies, like toilet paper, like all kinds of things. Now, a lot of people, according to many psychological studies, there's a lot of people who are experiencing very high anxiety, depression, episodes of bipolar. They're stressed out. Not everybody is as happy as their public projection of their face. People are stressed out and are hurting. And you know what? The key, though, is you have to be prayed up. If you're walking under the anointing of the Holy Spirit, and you sense the grace of the Lord on you, and you sense the presence of the Lord on you, then what you might do is just float some little icebreaker, not something stupid, just something really subtle, and to see if somebody in your path, maybe a neighbor or whatever, that you sense needs ministering to, will pick up on it. And you don't force it. I don't believe in forcing people into being ministered. But you float out kind of a tester to see if they pick it up. You just feel the waters. Are they open? Or are they in a bad mood or whatever? And the Lord will show you step by step. And if the Lord wants you to talk to somebody, you don't have to lead them to Christ. The Lord, Christians have this obsession that, I have to lead somebody to Christ. No, you simply have to be available to shine the light and lead them to Christ. That may mean doing the pre-evangelism work, rushing and manipulating people to force them to say a sinner's prayer. Turns off a lot of people. Your job may be just to prepare and somebody else comes along. You just be real, and you don't put on airs, and you pray, and you don't push it. You don't force somebody. And it's amazing that if you follow the Holy Spirit and you don't force an agenda, sometimes the Lord will use you to encourage you. Sometimes the Lord will use you to share part of your testimony, give somebody a word of hope, give somebody some wisdom. And sometimes the Lord will lead you to lead somebody to Christ. And then you should not feel bad, because everybody has different gifts and talents. And so, what right do I have to be even remotely boastful for having different gifts and talents than you do? That's ridiculous. They're not my talents. And your talents are not your talents. But you walk and you listen to the Lord, and the Lord may lead you to have a conversation. And you may lead somebody to the Lord, or you may plant a suggestion, See, the results are up to God. We don't beat ourselves up. And then finally, sometimes we do lead people to the Lord, and they actually received Christ in the strangest places. But I never try to force it. Forcing it's the worst thing that you can do. And you can. This is one huge way. I was thinking about this the other day when I was running errands with a mask on my face. But I was thinking about the fact that there's a huge number of people who are intelligent Christians. They pray. They love the Lord. They're good communicators. They're better than average communicators. They're smart people, but they have trouble personally leading people to the Lord. You know what? I want to set you free from that bondage right now. I don't think that you personally have trouble leading people to the Lord. I think that's a lie you've been told all your life, or a lie you've told yourself. Just because you don't, quote, officially tie the knot and lead people in the sinner's prayer, and, just because all that official stuff doesn't happen, doesn't mean that you were even microscopically unfaithful to leading somebody to the Lord. Because let's face it, there are people that come along and plant seeds in people's lives, sometimes 10 years before you talk to them, sometimes as kids. Sometimes a person absolutely is not interested in anything to do with the Lord. But if you're around them 3 years from then, and they went through some things, all of a sudden they are interested. So see, the key is we each do our part, and we don't worry about who gets the glory, who gets the results, who gets the brownie points for winning people to the Lord. It's just as valuable to plant those pre-evangelism seeds of hope as it is to do the actual leading people to the Lord. One way a lot of people can lead people to the Lord, and this is very simple, and people underestimate it. When your personality, your network of friends, your social media, your YouTube, your Facebook, whatever you use, when you send the links of programs like this and videos like the ones we produce on Para or our Roku channel, or these Paul McGuire Report radio programs, or our video documentaries, or the articles we have. We publish and generate so much social media content. When you take it upon yourself, I was thinking about this, and it's like, it's good to ask the Lord, who I should send this to, that this might help or whatever. But I would take it a step further. I think the way I'm going to pray, because I pray this for myself, is not, Lord, should I do this? Because I already know the Lord wants me to do it. So I'm kind of lying to the Lord by saying, Lord, should I do this, this, and that? I mean, that might be applicable if you're in a very, very delicate thing with a corporation, and there's conflicting religious beliefs, and there's a political dynamic, and all kinds of landmines you could step on. Well, then certainly before you make any move, you don't want to prematurely push stuff out there, because it's irreversible. So I want to say that. But just in the course of conversation or whatever, encouraging people to tune into this Paul McGuire radio program by sharing it with them on your cell phone or your laptop, sharing them the Roku channel, sharing them the articles, sharing them the prophetic emergency alert video reports, paying for their video documentary download on the Conquering the Matrix and Mass Awakening and Are You Ready? And these are hot videos, and they can teach people a lot. Just pay for it and send it to somebody. It's just not a free download. Somebody has to pay for it. So what you're doing is what I've learned is you've got to have the trust of the people, all the people you're social media networking with. If you're constantly sending them bozo the clown stuff and stupid stuff and lame stuff, guess what? They're going to bounce you off their list, and they're not going to pass on anything you send them for the most part, because you're not hitting the target. Chances are, at least they think, that you're going to alienate their friends and drive their friends further away from Christ. That's true. That's why you got to think about it before you send a picture or whatever, because different things can have different meanings to people. So the other thing is, you can send, when I say you pray, and if an article impresses you, that's the key word. If an article impresses you, not every article or every show that I do on the Paul McGuire Report is for everybody. See, like this program, in your heart, you can probably think of 10 people who would really relate to this program. On another program, you might think of 3 or 4 people. On another program, you might think of 50 people. The key is, who are these people? And so the Lord is personal. So when the Lord lays somebody on your heart and says, hey, this person, and he names some names, they would relate to this. The only person on planet Earth that God can use to send them a video or Paul McGuire Report that relates to them is that you send the link, okay, with a little note from you. Check this out. You'll like this, and give them a quick reason. Real quick. Don't oversell it. And that's how we spread far and wide, because this is why it's important. And I'm not asking just for myself, and I've never asked this just for myself. From day one, I have always said, it's your job to support as many media people, ministers, leaders, conservative spokespeople, Christian spokespeople, authors, Bible teachers, etc. It's your job to promote and spread the people who you believe in the integrity and the importance of their message. Okay? It's your job, because if you don't do it, no one will. See, I'm not blaming you. Please don't understand me. 3 years ago, it wasn't like that. 3 years ago, all the computer algorithm engines, somewhat fairly, would feed interesting articles to all kinds of people. They wouldn't censor, they wouldn't divide, they wouldn't block information because it wasn't politically correct. Now, the kinds of stuff that you relate to, I relate to, and millions of Americans relate to, stuff that has to do with Christian stuff, biblical spiritual stuff, certain perspectives on social, geopolitical issues. So much of it's evil. The big tech companies are receiving money from the Central Intelligence Agency to attack Judeo-Christian moral values. And they wage war. So anything, if you even send out a picture of, this is hypothetical, if you send out a picture of whoever their candidate's going to be, it could be Cuomo, but if you sent out a picture of a Photoshop of Cuomo looking believably but extremely ugly with a derogatory statement that would brand him as kind of a loser, I guarantee you the big tech companies would make your video on Cuomo disappear. You'd be gone. No watches, no hits, no nothing. If you did the same thing, distorting Donald Trump, making him look kind of like a bozo, you would soar and have very high numbers. You see? So this is rigged. So what it's doing is it's providing a blockade against certain kinds of information, Christian information, conservative information. So the only way this is a war. Guess what? Welcome to the thought police war. And I've been talking about this for years. So this is the greatest battle for the hearts and minds of mankind in the history of the world. So the way you win this war is you have to take up the initiative. Nobody else will do it. And if you won't take responsibility for that little bit of work, then my question to you is, do you really love God? Do you really love America? Do you really love your children? Because if you don't have a couple of minutes here and there, then I don't know what to tell you. So you send a link of programs like mine and programs from other people that you like, that you think really are informative, help hit the button, raise awareness or whatever, spiritually strengthen people, whatever. Okay? That's how it's done. But it needs a little personal note from you. So like send it into a group. Ask to join the group. Spread these things in a group. Get the permission. Network. See, because if you won't network, remember the other side has hundreds of millions of dollars to pay people to network and pay computer algorithms to network to defeat Christian conservative causes. That's how deadly this is. So the key here is to do an end run around their blockades. Their blockades are electronic computers called algorithms. They use artificial intelligence. What they do is they sift through all the Facebooks, all the Brighteons, all the YouTubes, all the there's so many social media platforms I have myself, I can't remember them. All your social media platforms, all the social media platforms ministry uses, they sift through it, and they, through very sophisticated computers, they delete and make disappear any imaging, any verbiage, any music, any symbols, any writing, any video that promotes conservative ideas or Christian ideas in a compelling way. You got it? This is a war. So the only way you can do around, because they spend billions on computers to do it, the only way you can get around it is you make the choice to do it yourself. You send it to groups that you like with a little introduction and stuff. Be imaginative. We've got to work together. I cannot stress to you how important it is to work together, because this is what's happening in the near future. I've heard this, I've thought about it, and quite frankly, I think it's a problem. My purpose is not really to make a political statement. It's to make a statement about two political parties, Republican political party, Democratic political party. We both know that the older politicians get, the less savvy they get with social media because they didn't grow up with it. So like Hillary Clinton putting, her private server, what was it, in a bathroom in Colorado Springs. I mean, that borders on like retardation. It's because she didn't grow up in the computer generation. That's why. A young person wouldn't make that mistake. A lot of the Republicans making similar mistakes, not being savvy and not knowing really how to work social media and the constant change in social media. Now, Trump is not the savviest overall social media entrepreneur, but he don't underestimate. Did I say savage? I meant Donald Trump. Don't underestimate him. Don't underestimate him. He is the master at getting national attention on something ridiculous, and while everybody's calling him stupid, he's enjoying total privacy, and they fall for it over and over again. Remember what he did with Twitter. He basically controlled the nation with Twitter. So what's happening is we're going into an election cycle, and let's be realistic with the appraisal. I would say at this present moment, they keep saying, well, the big tech companies, or some of them like Facebook, Zuckerbergers, having dinner with Trump, and they're going to save Trump. Oh, really? You really believe that? Even if Zuckerberg was in a deal with Trump, would Zuckerberg alone have the power to save Trump? No, you've got lots of other social media that's very, very powerful that doesn't like Trump, along with certain media and entertainers. So this warfare we're facing is a spiritual warfare, a 5G warfare, a psychological operations warfare, a social media algorithm, artificial intelligence warfare, and an old-fashioned mainstream media dying on the vine warfare. But this is what everyone's concerned about, and I don't think Trump and his advisors, due to their age category, really get it. They're all enamored about going on the Fox News Network. That's great. Fox News Network does some good things. But guess what? Trump did not win the last election because of Fox News Network. Fox News Network wasn't even for him. And when the day is done, don't be surprised if Fox News Network is not wholeheartedly for Trump once again. So to put all your eggs in the basket, as Donald Trump and many of the Republicans have done, to be totally for Fox News, and that's what's going to give you the victory, Fox News. That's very stupid. That's very, very, it's so stupid, I don't even want to say it's very stupid again. It's stupid beyond belief. You're ignoring the more powerful opinion, idea changers at work in our world. And that is the most powerful opinion makers and belief changers and political advocates in our world today are the big tech companies and social media, such as Facebook, such as Bing, such as Microsoft, such as Apple, such as Netflix, such as Amazon. And there was one I was missing that was huge. Such as, did I say YouTube? Yeah. Such as Google. I mean, on and on and on and on. The AOL. This is an interlocking hive mind Orwellian world brain. Okay, it interfaces. They all interface with one another. So when you look at AOL, you're looking at who was on Jimmy Kimmel the night before. You have these little blurbs in AOL which have a picture of the president looking like a loser and whoever they want looking like a winner. That's all I have to say. It's a subconscious impression. I think Trump is far more media savvy than most Republicans and many Democrats. But because of Trump's age category and demographic and that of many of his top advisors, they don't get the world of social media. And Trump has lost. He has amputated, let's say, both his legs, figuratively, so to speak, in communicating to his followers directly utilizing social media. Okay? He's hurt. He's damaged his own social media. I don't know if it's even repairable. He either has to start honest and clean social media from start immediately, or he's got to demand and force the fakes that are pretending to be on his side. I mean, really, you really think these people are going to be on his side? What are you, crazy? Social media is going to be Trump's Trojan horse. He's going to fall hard on it. And the other part is that Trump keeps, I'm not here to pick on the guy. I pray for the guy. But Trump keeps leaning into neocon international banker territory. Let's have national ID built around the coronavirus. Trump seems to be making a deal for like a little bit of a totalitarian police state as kind of a trade-off it looks like he's making a trade-off, like he's making a deal, the art of the deal to save his skin. The other thing is this doctor, whatever his name is, I can never pronounce his name, Colucci, forgive me. Is he really on his side? I don't know. I've heard from people, I have not seen it, so I have not witnessed it, that this doctor is laughing when Trump's speaking. If that is the case, and I have not seen it myself, but if that's the case, Trump have to have the courage to fire somebody like that. And then the other thing is Trump is relying on the globalist, universal health care, Bill Gates, euthanasia mindset, Planned Parenthood, Agenda 2030. He's tapped into that hive mind. He's plugged into that world brain. And he's trying to make his decisions from the point of view and perspective of people who are have an emotional contagion with excessive population growth, 5G killing immune systems, 5G potentially. I didn't say it was, but is it potentially a trigger to the immune system? What is this virus? What is this virus? Serious questions aren't being asked. is this a biological warfare virus that escaped from a lab? Okay, let's say it's not. Whether it is or isn't, it's behaving with incredible aggressiveness. So let's just fight it as if it was, with everything we got, rather than being caught with our pants down. I see too much of a laissez-faire attitude in this fight against the virus. Too many people being exposing the people with compromised immune systems. Why did it take several weeks after you had all these young people and young adults running around thinking they were immune, yet they were potent carriers to the virus to those who were not immune? The same with all the people in the grocery stores and these supermarkets. The economic backlash. Anybody who's thinking out of the box right now recognizes just about every form of employment on planet Earth. Not every form, but a huge percentage of the various types of jobs are all reliant on facing a customer, exchanging something with your hands, filling something out with a pen, getting a box. I mean, Uber, whatever. So I'm making a prediction. When I say I make a prediction, it's not out of the vanity of proclaiming myself a prophet, because I don't claim myself to be a prophet. I'm making a scientific prediction, a statistical prediction, based on scientific data, God-given intuition. I'm not going to succumb to the vanity of saying, God supernaturally told me. I'm a prophet. God supernaturally. Because how can you argue a guy with that like that? If somebody plays that card on you, what are you going to say? Oh, well, I can't disagree with God. And this is the beginning of the theological flaw of the Catholic Church. They made the Pope the God on earth. The Protestants are going to do the same thing. They got to watch it. It's a slippery slope with this prophet stuff and this apostle stuff. I'm not saying it isn't necessary to have spiritual and supernatural organization. I'm not saying that God doesn't supernaturally organize his church and confer on different people different anointings and different gifts, because he does. But simply saying that it, not for the sake of legalism, but there needs to be a certain reining in to a degree. To a degree. Not quenching the spirit, to a degree, reining it in. So, the challenge before us is this could go on for like a year with these second wave things. Based on what I've studied with the science, the research, the data, I don't claim to be a medical researcher. I don't claim to be a doctor. This is my opinion as a Bible teacher, a teacher of Bible prophecy, a researcher in science and other areas, as well as economics. I can't, and since I'm not making a prediction, because I think that's dishonest, especially when your predictions don't come true, it is my hypothesis that we are going to develop an antidote for this coronavirus relatively quickly. That's my hypothesis. And that that the center of the treatment may very well be built around this current coronavirus treatment. In addition, the testing of people who have developed antibodies after being exposed with coronavirus provide a potent pool of resources for us to fight the coronavirus. Now, where I am concerned, I think, making precise dates. So are we talking about 6 months from now or a year from now? There are variables that I think make it impossible to say it's going to be 6 months or a year. It could be longer. It could be quicker. It depends how quickly the viability of these antibiotics are harnessed and how quickly this other stuff is implemented and how quickly the new N95 masks and the sterilization stuff and the gloves and militant social distancing. And I have not heard anything about, ionized air and stuff, which sterilizes the air, as if that's not true. There are much more powerful sterilization agents, and there are immune system builders that you can take with shots and nutrients. These immune system builders do not guarantee 100% that you're not going to catch the coronavirus, but they overall, by whatever statistical level, boost your immune system. The more your immune system is boosted, and you can check with your medical doctor about it, but in most cases, the stronger your immune system is, the more likely you're going to resist the coronavirus. So I don't have this, at least regarding the coronavirus, I don't have this end of the world morbidity. I could see a year, a half a year, 2 years. I don't know. I'm suspecting it would be less time. And my optimism is not based on super spirituality. When I saw the girl get out of the church today, it was a large church, talking to the big time network reporter in an incoherent way about how she went to church and wasn't she bothered by sitting close next to everybody in the church. And the pastors told us to come to church. Therefore, they all came to church. And she said she's not going to get it because the blood of Jesus cleanses her from all sin. Okay, I believe the blood of Jesus cleanses us from all sin. However, I believe it is extremely foolish and reflects a serious lack of wisdom and spiritual diplomacy to flaunt before a cynical, non-believing world which has seen Christians function as crackpots and lunatics for the last 30 years, to run around, for the evangelical Christians to run around like a bunch of nuts saying the blood of Jesus has cleansed them from all sin, and that they can't get it, and their pastor told them to come with this silly grin in their face, is not a biblical answer, and it sets up Christians to look like idiots. And therefore, in the strongest terms, I say it is the worst thing the Christian community could do in terms of representing itself as sane, rational, loving, and the authentic people of the living God. Okay? You don't win people to Christ acting like a lunatic. First of all, there's a huge presumption here. Just because the pastor said nobody's going to get sick if they come to his church with coronavirus, that's a prophetic statement that defies science. Okay? God defies science all the time. But the question is, what is the track record? What is the leadership reliability? What is the integrity of this pastor who says nobody can get coronavirus in our church, and then tells that to all of his population, his congregants? Is he speaking the truth? I don't think he's speaking the truth because he can't know what the truth is. What if elderly people, 67 plus, having other pre-existing conditions, breathe in the droplets of the coronavirus because they're not aware of it, but their immune system is compromised, and they end up dying, or they get seriously ill, or they transmit it to somebody who gets dying? That's a very high probability. What happens when the young people who are transmitting the coronavirus, but nobody knows they have it because they show absolutely no symptoms? They're simply very healthy-looking carriers. So you have older people in the church and the CDC has released potential immune system lowered risk dangers. Anybody over the age of 67, all kinds of medical conditions, lack of sleep, stress, um, um, diabetes, arthritis, and all kinds of other diseases. Not to mention certain kinds of autoimmune diseases, depending upon how strong they are. So if you have a pre-existing condition, so like hepatitis, I mean, there's a huge list of serious preconditions. So people don't go around telling the other church members what their preconditions are. So elderly people whose immune systems are compromised, or people whose immune systems are compromised because they have a serious pre-existing condition, then in that lowered immune system response because of a pre-existing condition, the coronavirus, which would normally just maybe get on their skin and they wouldn't really get it if their immune system was strong, their immune system is not functioning strong. So, because they have a lowered immune system, they come in proximity with the coronavirus, they breathe it in, and 14 days later, they get it. Meanwhile, they've exposed people at their work in a similar age group. Meanwhile, let's say they've exposed some young, healthy, robust people who show no symptoms, but they go home to their elderly parents and infect them. And meanwhile, other elderly people at a church or something have received a transmission. So, because of the choice of this church in one community, I'm not trying to bash the church. Please don't misunderstand me. I'm not trying to bash the church, but because of the foolish decision of this one church that did not think through the serious implications, the wrath of the atheists, the secular humanists, the people who don't like Christians is going to be aroused against the Christians. It's not because we're afraid of the wrath of unbelievers. It's because it's not prudent to do things that are stupid, that cause reproach to Jesus Christ. We're supposed to be ambassadors to Jesus Christ. We're supposed to conduct ourselves above reproach. That means being sharp, intelligent. Okay? So, I've seen a number of these news stories of these people meeting in churches. Okay, here's the problem. If they're regarding all these people who are Christians who are going to church under the blood of Jesus, I believe in miracles, okay? But I would not. First of all, I would check out the Christian leader. It's going to tell me a lot about his prophetic or lack of prophetic giftings, the integrity of his character and his prophecies over a period of 40 years will tell you whether he's for real or not. Jack Hayford was for real. He didn't say things like this. So, the potential to catch a disease, etc., and people carrying it. So what will happen? I have no idea how many churches in the United States are having these services. And one guy was intelligent. There was social distancing. There was all kinds of sanitary measures. So in that case, there was no difference between him and a Ralph's. It's the other guy who just jammed everybody in. How many churches are just jamming people in? Okay, because this is what will be the repercussions and the fallout for the body of Christ. If it's determined that there is a spread or an acceleration of the coronavirus or transmission of the coronavirus due to all these Christians going to churches and Bible studies, if they find a relationship between the increase of the spread of the coronavirus and Christian church meetings and Christian meetings, the general public will go ballistic and begin to hate Christians for being, quote, stupid and for endangering their lives and being, quote, so stupid that they're spreading the coronavirus. No, we really need to grasp this. this essentially glaring lack of wisdom, which is stupidity, if that is the policy of many churches, to disregard the medical experts, cram themselves into the buildings where they could potentially get the coronavirus. If coronavirus outbreaks can be traced to these church gatherings and church functions, the church is going to inadvertently sow the seeds for all hell to break loose against it in anger. Okay? Very serious. People already don't like the church, and now that the church the church and Trump are already mixed as synonymous, the deplorables. And now you have people saying, well, the blood of Jesus cleanses me of all sin, I'm just going to wantonly go to church. You're going to have a blowback. You're going to have anger. You're going to have rage. And it will be targeted against all the churches that disobeyed the health orders. And there will be hostility, anger, persecution, violence, even potentially bringing infected cloths, materials, other things, and rubbing them on the inside of a church as payback. You think that won't happen? I think you're a lot out of touch with our society. This is a very strategic. This is where it comes for mature Christian leaders to rise to the surface and lead intelligently. Christian leaders who are telling their congregations to come to church where the coronavirus is present are not only endangering their church and their communities, they are potentially responsible, if things go badly, for an epidemic and plague of a worse kind of contagion than the coronavirus, which is the contagion of hatred towards Christians and fear, because that can spread like wildfire. So this is critical to deal with this stuff. Churches, and this other guy who had a church, his was organized. He had everybody social distancing. He had a cleaner. He had outdoors thing. It was very, very well thought out. So the key is to do that. So you see, potentially, I'm not a big advocate at all of vaccinations, and the reason I am is not because I'm not anti-science. It's not because I'm anti-science. It's because many of the people who are the advocates of euthanasia, many of the people who are advocates of vaccination, their parents were militant euthanasia people, or they were militant euthanasia people. And let's just define euthanasia. Euthanasia is the false belief, it's not scientifically valid, that the number one problem for excessive population growth is overpopulation, and that the current Earth's population is 7 billion. We need to reduce it by 6.5 billion, which means only 500 million people left. And euthanasia believes that we kill off the sickly, the elderly, those most vulnerable to die, and we do everything we can to accelerate their death from bad nutrition, bad health care, vaccinations, and so on and so forth. Now, this is not some conspiracy theory. You have to remember that the intellectual elite, the Illuminati, the globalist elite, whatever you want to call them, this is a philosophy that they have married since the 1800s. They adopted it from the backslidden English clergyman Walter Malthus. And Malthusian philosophy teaches the bigger the population growth, the greater the death rate. So the game is mass annihilation, mass abortion, mass sterilization, of the global population. So it's interesting when you read that the people who are most likely to die from the coronavirus are 67 years old and older, who suffer from a whole spectrum of autoimmune diseases, as well as arthritis and diabetes and other things, and heart conditions and cancers, etc. In other words, people who have outlived their most productive years and are now sliding into their 70s, from a purely utilitarian standpoint, are not the most desirable group in society because they've done their work. Now get out of the way, old man, old woman, and let's have new workers. That wouldn't sound so terrible, except that look who the coronavirus is targeting. It's targeting older people of retirement age. They have the greatest, they have the lesser immunity to it. So it's almost like it's a designer virus designed to target people that are considered obsolete in a materialistic, computerized, cyborg, artificially intelligent society. Let me read you something here. That's very important. I want to read this to you. And it has to do with population control and a scientific dictatorship that people, they can't face it because it's like this. It's a seductive part of the matrix, and they can't break their hypnotic grasp into the eyes of the matrix when it comes to euthanasia. So let me read you something, okay? You'll find this interesting. Living in a scientific, this is from my book, Mass Awakening, which you should get as part of the volumes of education. You should get The Day the Dollar Died, Mass Awakening, Are You Ready, A Prophecy of the Future of America, A Prophecy of the Future of America 2016-2017, Conquering the Matrix, The Warning, and Are You Ready for the Microchip? And The Greatest Battle for the Hearts and Minds of Mankind in the History of the World. And there's more books, but if you were to take those books and put them in every church, in fact, if you got those books and didn't allow your pastor to con you, but if you got those books and put them in order and have the librarian put volume 1, 2, 3, so people can see it's a body of study. These are not separate books. And you bought them for a whole bunch of churches and youth groups where they would actually read them, not where they're going to go get lost and play Nintendo in the back of the room. If you had a entertaining, engaging, basically open-minded student, woman, man, teacher, to teach this body of books, because it's all written in contemporary language. I mean, I talk about Captain America, X-Men, everything else. You would raise up in a short period of time a Christian futuristic counterculture where true Christianity, like the dunamis power of God, the dynamite power of God, would explode from the traps of its prehistoric moorings, and you would see society revolutionized by the power of the gospel of Jesus Christ on a level you've never seen before. So I want to read you, because you see, Christians and Christian leaders and Christian seminary heads and Christian professors, they all are specialists for the most part in in tiny fields of study, okay, in select microcosm fields of study. Now, I was harshly criticized for that when I was a young author, living up in the Hollywood Hills, producing independent science fiction movies and writing my first series of books, all of which got published. But I had a nasty publisher. There's nothing worse than a publisher who secretly wants to be an author but has never been able to be an author. You know why? Because they have a secret hatred for authors, and they think, Christians, they think that by torturing an author verbally, it's a sick thing, it's a perverse thing, that somehow they can remove the pain of their own sense of inner rejection and sense of inadequacy about being authors. See, they didn't really want to be publishers. They wanted to be authors, but they didn't believe in themselves. That's not always the case. So this big Christian publishing company that used to handle Dr. Francis Schaeffer, they received my manuscript. They returned it, in which basically they used it for, sorry to be blunt, they did the equivalent of using my manuscript as toilet paper. And I received, whenever you get a creative critique by a publisher or an editor, it's always because they're frustrated writers, and so they write these long critiques, which is their method of writing, and they use their creativity by cruelly attacking you. Doesn't mean they don't have some valid things to say. They do, but they go way overboard. So the editor accidentally sends me like a 4-page memo, which is supposed to go to the other head publisher and editor. It wasn't supposed to go to me, because I'm good friends with Francis Schaeffer, the son of Frankie Schaeffer, close with Edith Schaeffer, and the Schaeffers are their bread and butter. They're the main authors of this publishing company. And so they want to be nice to the Schaeffers, but see, I don't have the big name like the Schaeffers have. Even though I had the content, I didn't have the name. And that's fine. Everybody's got to pay their dues. So this guy sadistically ripped me to shreds and my book to shreds, and basically said, I'm paraphrasing, it's way, way back. He said that my problem is McGuire takes on too many subjects. He needs to focus in on 1 or 2 subjects instead of focusing in on a wide spectrum of subjects. And then more criticisms about how I take on too much to chew and I need to paint within the little boxes or whatever. And then a couple of personal, let's see, I'm a loose cannon, or I'm a loose thermonuclear weapon. Because I would see, remember, this was in the days before Trump. So I'm not using Trump as the example of the virtuous Christian. But prior to the days of Trump, most everybody, including Christians, had to be unnecessarily restrained. Now, you might like that and may not like it, but that was always difficult for me because, like Trump, I grew up in Jackson Heights, Queens, and Trump grew up in Queens also, where you speak a tough guy language. You say what you mean. You're aggressive, and nobody's mad at you for that. In other states, they think you're being rude. So these guys ripped me apart mainly because I took on too many subjects, and they didn't like me. But the real reason they didn't like me was not that my book was written bad, because the book was actually the foreword was written by Francis Schaeffer, but they didn't like me because how dare I come near the royal territory of the Schaeffer family. That they wanted to do that as writers, but they didn't have enough confidence in themselves. Anyway, Uh, it's like when you're climbing up. May I say this to those of you that have a dream and they're climbing up to get your dream? That's the way you're going to be treated like that more than you're not. There's something about human nature which is inherently jealous about somebody else succeeding. And for some reason, there's a lot of people who take a perverse delight in insulting you, mocking you, or trying to belittle you. So the point that I'm trying to make is that Schaeffer, I was saying the same thing Schaeffer was saying, but I was using I was using intellectual language, but I was reaching scientific language, science fiction language, contemporary language. Because the one mistake I felt Schaeffer made, and that's was that he spoke only to the highly literate. And as we move past the post-literate age, you have to speak in a style that's intellectual, but a style that's fast-moving, artistic, and grabs you. So let me read something, because this is what we're really fighting against, and this is why these publishers, and it's fine, it's over. I forgot about it years ago. But instead of fighting me, their goal, I mean, they're talented guys. They demonstrated their talent in the way they insulted me. Why not keep your eye on the tiger and defeat the real enemy? So this is what is said by the planners, the intellectual elite planners of our world in the 1950s, and in the year 2000, and so on and so forth. 1952, okay? I want to read you what Bertrand Russell, the Fabian socialist, intellectual planner of the New World Order, said, okay? In 1952. Bertrand Russell said, America, Europe, Russia, China, and the majority of the nations of the world are now controlled by covert forms of scientific social engineering, and the majority of the people have absolutely no clue that they are living, thinking, and behaving as a result of scientific conditioning. Think about that. You think the average pastor has any clue as to what? I'm not going to read it again. You can rewind the tape. Do you think the average Christian pastor, the average Christian seminarian, Bible teacher, men's meeting, do you think they have any clue whatsoever that we've been in this world since 1952? Here, I'm going to read it again. Because this is reality. You can pretend it's not, but it's reality. From Bertrand Russell. America, Europe, Russia, China, and the majority of the nations of the world are now controlled by covert forms of scientific social engineering, and the majority of the people have absolutely no clue that they are living, thinking, and behaving as a result of scientific conditioning. In 1952, another Fabian socialist, Bertrand Russell, said, let's see. I think the subject which will be of most importance politically is mass psychology. Mass psychology is, scientifically speaking, not a very advanced study. This study is immensely useful to practical men, whether they wish to become rich or to acquire the government. It is, of course, as a science founded upon individual psychology. But hitherto, it has employed rule of thumb methods which are based upon a kind of intuitive common sense. Its importance has been enormously increased by the growth of modern methods of propaganda. Of these, the most influential is what is called education. Religion apart, though a diminishing one, the press, the cinema, and the radio play an increasing part. Now, let me read you this again, okay? Bertrand Russell, one of the most brilliant intellectuals, militant atheist, a huge planner of the New World Order and a globally controlled society by a scientific elite. All right. So he's talking, and what he's saying is that that the masses have no idea that they're under the spell of mass psychology. Okay, and that they have no idea that they are under the influence right now, that they're under the influence of very powerful methods of scientific propaganda. And then he says, of the most influential kinds of propaganda is what is called education. Religion plays a part, though a diminishing one. The press, the cinema, and the radio play an increasing part. So what is he saying? He's saying that our society is basically under mind control. They're basically under modern methods of propaganda, and the main disseminator of modern methods of propaganda is the public educational system, the school system, which goes K through PhD, if you want it, kindergarten, or actually nursery school through. So you're brainwashed from then on. He wasn't exaggerating. He wasn't joking. He said Russell, who was an ardent atheist and promoter of a one world government, emphasized that mass psychology would be employed to condition people. Then it talks about the need to create a black plague every once in a while to get rid of overpopulation. So can you think about that? I mean, giving people a plague. Russell was calling for selective breeding, where you breed people with what they believe is superior DNA. That's happening now. It's just hiring secretly. Started with Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood in the 1920s. Selective breeding. So it talks about one of the things that Russell talks about is infecting the population secretly, every 10 years or so, infecting the global population secretly with like a plague, like the Black Plague, and where you wipe out tens of millions or hundreds of millions of people. So you have to realize that when he recommended this, he wasn't joking. This wasn't like satire for him. He was saying that the only way we can effectively control the population is to use mass euthanasia, either mass starvation, radioactive weapons, or plague, biological warfare plagues, to wipe out millions of people. And he was saying this in the 1950s. And not only was he saying it, many of the Fabian socialists were saying it, like H.G. Wells. So his focal point is these people, instead of being arrested, most people would be arrested for writing down what their criminal intent was, how they planned to do it, etc. These people, nothing ever happens to them, but they call for how they're going to use a black plague to destroy millions of people and dominate planet Earth. So very disturbing, and it's something that we need to realize with the coronavirus. It's one thing to jump to conclusions. It's another thing to walk around like half blind, and we don't want to walk around half blind. we want to walk around intelligent. Oh, there's so much more to talk, and I need to stop this. But I do want to mention this, because this is in my book, Mass Awakening by Paul McGuire. Chapter 10, Alien Invasion, a mass event that will produce a global government. And in this chapter in my book, I talk about aliens, UFOs, Operation Bluebeam. I talk about the Princeton Radio Propaganda Project, where Henry Cantrell and the Invasion from Mars study, a study in the psychology of panic from Princeton University. And they used Orson Welles, who got up on the radio waves and pretended that we were being invaded by Martian invaders. And it was a psychological study in mass hysteria, and it changed the direction of a nation in just hours. Now, what we need to understand is that Invaders from Mars was not just some cutesy release of a radio drama on a national radio program. It was produced by professional propaganda scientists at the University of Princeton, which had a propaganda science department. And it was where they did studies in generating hysteria and panic through radio. So, for example, in page 239 of my book, Mass Awakening, I write, the Princeton University Radio Project, under supervision of psychologists Dr. Paul F. Lazarsfeld, Frank Stanton, later head of CBS, Dr. Hadley Cantrell, hired Orson Welles to adapt H.G. Wells' fiction book, The War of the Worlds, for radio in order to study the behavior of citizens under panic conditions. War of the Worlds was heard by 6 million people, 1,700,000 of whom believed in a Martian invasion, and 1,200,000 of whom were frightened enough to take action, either by running away or by preparing to fight the invaders. Later, Dr. Cantrell wrote his paper entitled The Invasion from Mars, A Study in the Psychology of Panic. Cantrell's study examined the power of the radio broadcast and media and its effects upon the population under the direct influence of fear, which later was adapted by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology Project Operation and NASA's Project Operation Bluebeam, where you use EMF waves to project visual hallucinations to people through giant holographic images and other technologies that could artificially stimulate an alien invasion in the sky, even though it doesn't exist. So, when you see this data, when you see this coronavirus, one has to ask the question. I mean, clearly people are being infected by something. So to say there's no coronavirus, I think is rather ridiculous. There is a coronavirus. People are getting sick, and it's spreading. But to what degree is it being used as a psyops weapon? To what degree? And perhaps we'll never know. In any case, we better pray for our nation. For our fight is not against flesh and blood, but against the principalities and powers, against the dark unseen forces of wickedness in heavenly places. God bless you. This is Paul McGuire. Visit paulmcguire.us. Spread this far and wide. And remember, Jesus is Lord. And he told us that the signs of the times were coming. And he's going to deliver us. Rejoice. Again I say rejoice, for your redemption draweth nigh.